Oh, Ratchet & Clank. Like an old friend, this series keeps showing up every few years and invades my home for a couple of weeks. And while it's had some questionable iterations, generally speaking it stayed loyal to its fantastic roots, the 3D platformer. Insomniac knows the gameplay this series evolves around will keep folks coming back for more, and will push them to innovate and experiment with how to implement the ever-growing abilities and mechanics this daring duo has to offer. So what of these playgrounds? What of the amazing backdrops in which Ratchet's traversal or gunplay or exploration takes place? Let's have a look at some of the best, eh? Here's, in my opinion, the top 10 Ratchet & Clank levels. Just for the record, this is 100% my opinion, and while there'll be some titles that are glaringly omitted, it's simply because I never played them. I've tried to create a list that not only encompasses all the games I've played, but that also addresses some of these gameplay mechanics or themes that are integral to the series. It will undoubtedly differ from your top 10, so please share yours in the comments below. Anyway, let's get to it. Number 10. I feel sorry for Size Matters, because while it's by no means a good Ratchet & Clank game, it's not that bad a game. Well, to be honest, even that's being a little generous. But nonetheless, it did experiment with some interesting themes and mechanics. Shrinking down and exploring Clank was intriguing, let down only by the extremely weird Night Watchman character. And the Day 9 Moon level, if not a bit on the nose, presented an interesting mechanic in which the enemies became a lot more aggressive and resilient during the night portion of its incredibly quick day-night rotation. It was interesting, but vastly overshadowed by the god-awful chase sequence at the level's end. Oh, and the fact the mechanic was utilised by Insomniac's Spyro the Dragon nearly 10 years earlier. The game did have some redeeming features though, like the modular armour, which had some interesting effects, especially when you combined armour segments from different sets creating interesting combinations. And more relevant to this list, the trippy dream sequence on Medical Outpost Omega. Surreal hallucinations have become a recognised trope within video games this last decade, like the ancient trials in Far Cry 3, or the dodgy water-induced murderthon/run away from all the spiders sequence in Uncharted 3, or the seeking the weird child in the woods in Mass Effect 3. You know, I'm starting to see a pattern here. But my first encounter with this now arguably overused trope is that in Size Matters, and to me, it's pretty well done. There's references to the past game's villains plastered all over the sky, an indication they still weigh heavily on Ratchet's subconscious. There's a part where you board a giant straw hat, which for anyone with even the slightest sense of style is a literal nightmare. And the level's enemies? Dr. Quark in his surgical chainsaw. Terrifying. You get to visit iconic locations of home which offer absolutely no refuge, deal with Ratchet's obvious overwhelming money problems, and I have to address the strange presence of a certain crustacean plaguing our hero's subconscious. Gross. From such a weak game, it's a nice, unexpected and welcome change of pace, and does well to distract you from the game's shortcomings, like the absolutely terrible junkyard combat, and the way the game's plot handles Quark, which is just, oh god, just no.
Papa? Can I have a piggyback ride?
Number 9. In the history of the Ratchet & Clank games, one aspect in my opinion has always been a little janky. It's the openings. Most of the games, for me at least, struggle to gain momentum. I mean, once they do, no doubt they snowball into awesomeness, but those first few steps are always a little awkward. They tend to suffer from expositional overload, with a heavy opening cutscene setting the story before dumping you into nondescript gameplay. Number 2 is a pretty good example of this, as if you skip the opening cinematic, you're all of a sudden invading a mysterious spaceship with not a lot telling you why. And in Up Your Arsenal, the cutscene opens with the titular characters playing chess and watching TV. Just get on with it. I know this sounds a little nitpicky, but if you compare these to the Nebulox 7 of Ratchet & Clank Nexus, it makes sense. Here you're dumped right into the action. You're on the hull repairing this mysterious ship in deep space, and you're told what's going on in a way that really grabs your attention. The game starts with you hitting the ground running, and my god does it build its pace quickly. Within 5 minutes, the ship's under attack and the plot is fully underway. The game starts and you play. If only the rest of the game held up this momentum. Number 8. So, I have mixed feelings about Crack in Time. In one hand, it's a vast adventure full of side quests and challenges that keep you occupied for weeks. And on the other hand, if you just play the core story, it can seem a little hollow and you can breeze through it in a few hours. It creates these scenarios and themes, plays them a little bit, but doesn't utilise them to their fullest potential. The case in point for this is the time travel mechanic. It is used fairly well in only 2 planets, with its best utilisation being Xanathar. This level is fantastic. It sees you darting back and forth through time, going back into history, changing subtle details, and exploiting the effects of those changes in the present. This was the thematic paradigm that Crack in Time set out to deliver, and while it's implemented again in Gimlick Valley, grinding the vine as the time portal is stupidly cool. It's not to the same effect as using the power of time to break into Nefarious' overbearing compound. Not to mention the Fongoids is a tricky word to say. Not to mention the Fongoid's account of Nefarious' crash landing and subsequent rule over the outpost is laugh out loud funny.
Have you met Dr. Nefarious yet? He's great and wonderful.
But the coolest effect these whole time travel shenanigans offer? is relegated to a cutscene. Number 7. Poor quest for booty. Everywhere you go where there's a discussion on the series progression, especially when addressing the future saga, Quaffba? Booty quest. Booty quest always gets slated. It's too short, it's too piratey, it's full of useless filler, it's not a real Ratchet and Clank game. Booty quest always gets the brunt of a lot of bashing. Or booty bashing as I like to call it. The thing is, I never quite understood why. It was bloody marketed as a mini-adventure, and the space pirates were a fun, integral part of Tool's destruction. So considering they were near enough completely absent from a crack in time, it makes sense that they got their own little installment. Booty quest fills a hole. It's not perfect, but it tied you over to a crack in time and does a great job of introducing the search for Clank. What's more, gameplay-wise, it's pretty sound. And the exploration of Darkwater Cove, for example, uncovering the remnants of a lost pirate base in search for a fabled gem is pretty interesting. The puzzle segments were for me a hell of a lot of fun, and the whole area presented this air of ancient mystery that I honestly can't find a match for in my Ratchet & Clank knowledge. This segment gripped me, lulling me to push forward, and I can't fault it for that. And then, traversing the pitch black cave with only the glowworms as a source of light, the sinister rustles in the dark hinting at a paranormal threat just out of view, it's a sense of impending danger that isn't really utilised, and if it is, not as well, in later games. Number 6! Ratchet Gladiator, or Deadlocked as you probably know it as if you're not European, also got a lot of flack when it was released, because many didn't see it for what it was, a spin-off. Insomniac took the arena combat introduced in number 2 and the campaign-style missions in number 3 and gave them their own standalone title, and they did a damn good job. The controls are more responsive, the level design is perfect for what they needed to be, and the story, which is understandably given a back seat, is not half bad either. While some levels are better than others, where this game really shines is its arena missions. The arena combat was good in number 2, better in number 3, but perfected in Gladiator. And while it's a mechanic that continued into the future series, it's obvious that this dedicated title does the job best. The biggest contributor to this is the gunplay. This takes many weapon archetypes in the original trilogy and tweaks their performance to better suit the dedicated combat style. And this is no more apparent than inside the arena. Number 5. I've said it time and time again. Ratchet & Clank 3 is my least favourite in the series, and perhaps my bias shone through when trying to give this game an entry. My issue is, to me, every high point this game has, another game did it better. Ratchet & Clank 2 had better collecting levels, the campaign combat was perfected in Ratchet Gladiator, and certain sequences just felt like a rehash of moments from the previous games. For example, the infiltration of Nefarious' ship is comparable to the dreadnought of Blarg Station in number 1. The pacing seems off as well. There are moments where the difficulty unceremoniously ramps up, and you end up spending a lot of time on levels where you arguably shouldn't. Zeldin crash site. One instance, however, does stand out to me as a work of genius, and that is Quark's hideout, Thran Asteroid Belt. You've been betrayed by Quark yet again, and you're tasked with tracking him down and confronting him. So what enemies are you put up against? Quark bots. Perfect. Time to unleash some pent-up frustration. There was something so satisfying about repeatedly hearing Jim Ward's cries of anguish as you plowed through Quark's robotic doppelgangers. And sure, the difficulty's hard, but you're working towards confronting arguably the biggest villain in the entire series. And in a way, it kind of pays off. You eventually find Quark a broken man in a f***ing onesie. Call me sadistic, but that was kind of satisfying. Also, f***ing lawn ninjas. What an awesome throwback to Ratchet & Clank 2. Number 4. So the remake of the original Ratchet & Clank brought many of those iconic levels into the new decade with a hell of a bump, staying loyal to the fantastic gameplay while making everything, and I mean everything, look absolutely fantastic. But inevitably there were some levels that didn't make this new cut. Some were admittedly forgettable, like the wintry bomb factory on Hoven or Quark's questionable assault course on Umbris. I mean, they were by no means bad levels, but they just didn't service the remake's refreshed plot, and alas, were expendable. And while other fantastic levels were dropped, like the multi-tiered Orkson, or the return to Kazil Plateau at the original's crescendo, the omitted level in particular that stands out to me has to be Gorda City on Altanis. This level was a game changer. Not only is it excruciatingly hard, but it has a knack of invoking a sense of vulnerability. For the first time in a large portion of the game, you're on your own again. You're sans Clank, and it hits when you've just perhaps become comfortable with the little toaster's help. The imposing ruined buildings, the intimidating storm that rages overhead, not to mention those terrifying sentinel bots. It all serves to put you on edge. And as for that Magnaboot section, that Magnaboot section. I think this was the first time my childhood body had experienced something close to an arrhythmia. Everything about this level is perfect in inducing anxiety, and its placement so late in the plot is a testament to a game knocking you on your ass just when you were getting comfortable. Number 3. The exploration levels. In my opinion, the best new mechanic introduced in Ratchet & Clank 2. The nature in which you're presented with this vast open area, a vague objective to collect nondescript items of some MacGuffin, and oodles of enemies, is the closest this game comes to a true sandbox. Get it? Tabora? It's the first one, and it's a desert. A sandbox. Shut up. Though the game's saying, you have the tools, you know how to use them, go have fun. And fun we had. Ignoring those bloody sewers, they were so much fun they even managed to sneak one of these levels into the Ratchet Clank remake, which I'm still not entirely sure how they managed to do that. Well done, Insomniac. Well done. And while the addition of the jetpack in later entries made for a more dynamic vertical exploration, and the originals in number 2 encapsulated that immediate sense of awe, in my opinion none came close to that of Sargasso. This level is beautiful. And look! Dinosaurs! You get to fly over the dinosaurs, you get to climb on the dinosaurs, you get to hunt and fight the dinosaurs. I mean, I may be a little biased because I f***ing love dinosaurs, but the level itself is pretty damn good too. There's just the right amount of side missions and locations that don't involve the dinosaurs to keep things interesting, and it truly rewards you for searching every nook and cranny. But for me, what really sells this level is the ability to soar over this Jurassic vista and just look at all those damn dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. Number 2. One thing I believe this series has down to a T throughout most of its entries is pacing. You feel when the games enter their final act and start building towards their respective crescendos. The levels become harder, the enemies become stronger, and while you may end up slogging away on a certain section that kicks your ass, Zelda and Crash site, you can't help but feel the game is speeding up, gaining momentum towards that inevitable conclusion. And then you get there. The final level. I mean, you're not always told it is, but you know. You can tell you're on the last leg, that the game's nearly over and you just need to make that final push. This bittersweet feeling is perfected on Yeedle in Ratchet & Clank 2. The landing cutscene plays, you leave your ship, and you're immediately confronted with the gigantic monolith that is the Megacorp factory. The first time I played this level, I had to set the controller down a second, compose myself, because there was something in that looming shot that was a challenge to me. The game was saying, come on then, if you really think you're strong enough. Let's see what you've got. This ultimate level is the only one I can remember that really feels like a mission. Infiltrate the factory. Just getting to the front door is a campaign in itself, and when you finally make it inside, you're faced with wave after wave of the compound's defenses. You finally make it to the end, not 100% sure what the final boss is going to be, and then there's that plot twist, and everything comes together. It may not be the most challenging final level, or the most inspired final boss, and in choosing a best ultimate level, this nearly lost out to the original's revisit of Kazil Plateau. But that opening shot, coupled with the infiltration nature that perfectly encapsulated the more militaristic motif number 2 went for, Yeedle has the best overall package that a final level should have. When you got off your ship, you knew the end was nigh, and you dived in locked and loaded. Number 1! I really thought I'd struggle with this number 1 spot. But after very little thought, the answer was painfully obvious to me. I adored the Ratchet & Clank remake, and while its plot was a little all over the place, I was overjoyed at the gameplay and the loyalty it showed to its 2002 counterpart. I very nearly gave this spot to Blackwater City, because that sewer section is one of the best gameplay sequences in the entire series. But then I played Metropolis. No, it is Metropolis. It is. I was a little apprehensive when I first picked up this title, knowing there would be planets omitted and sections added, and while New Walks On is okay, and the Deplanetizer is a bit of a wet fart of an ending, the additions that did work incredibly well are the aforementioned gas bar collectathon, and the re-envisioned and quite frankly amazing train sequence on Metropolis. Also, it's worth noting how many times this planet has been done in this series. Obviously in number 1, twice in number 3, and once again in Tools of Destruction. It's a credit to the studio that they managed to make it look incredible yet again, and the new levels progression is just inspired. Just when I'd played through the fight to Big Al's followed by that train section, I assumed and accepted the obstacle course had been omitted from this new version. But then bam, one questionable cutscene later, come on Clank, keep up, there it was, brilliant. And you know what, I enjoyed the level's air combat opening. I relished in exploring the skyline of Metropolis. It's called Metropolis. Fight me. And there you go. There's my list. As I said before, this is 100% my opinion. So if you think differently, definitely tell me in the comments below. I want to hear what aspects and mechanics shone through for you in this series, and what levels really showed them off. Also, if you like this kind of content from me, and think I should do more, again, let me know. I really wanted to try something new with this, and I want to know how you think it turned out. But for now, thank you so much for watching.
I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, he's a dude in it. Right, okay, that's hard to remember. It's the hiker. Duh. Who is it? David. Hi, Dave. Hey, look, cutscenes.
Hey, cutscenes.
With subtitles. That's always a good thing to have, isn't it?
Oh man, subtitles are great.